We will be going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're live.
Good morning, Owasso. This is the Twins with Owasso Live, and this is the Morning Loop. It is 8 a.m. like normal. It is 32 degrees outside, so it's pretty chilly out right now. And we have a high of 57 degrees today. So if it's anything like yesterday, I never wanted to be without a hoodie. I was wearing a beanie most of the day too, so hoodie, jacket, gloves. It's pretty chilly out. Now, hopefully, we won't have the kind of wind we had yesterday. So either way, if that's the case, keep your hoodies and your jackets nearby because it's never going to get super nice out. But again, that should change by Friday. We should be getting some warm weather by then, hopefully. So, with that being said, your traffic conditions are slow and steady. As usual, the 76th Street on ramp to 169 is your choke point, it's your congestion point. So, everything back here beyond the Y where I'm looking out at right now is flowing very steadily. There's no real bunch up, but it's starting to bunch up again right there by 76th Street. So be advised and be extremely cautious as you're driving by the 76th Street on ramp. Like I tell you that all the time. Just be careful by 76th Street. That is your danger zone. Call Kenny Loggins because you're in the danger zone. So, with that being said, local news, what do we got, Chad? I don't imagine anything's really changed on the calendar. I think we got perks and pastries and a couple things like that coming on.
Yes, on the local events for today, I'm pulling up the chamber right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's Today is, or actually no, that was yesterday. Today is pastry and perks.
Pastries and
So,
perks.
and
That's my
that's
favorite.
at the Owasso Chamber building. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's already started. So that's from 8 to 9. So go check that out if you have time. And that's all there is on the chamber event for this week. Owassoisms is the pet rescue fundraiser at Baja Jack's Burrito
That's
Shack,
right,
and
yeah.
that's on the 30th. Also on the 30th, the Renola Community Easter Egg Hunt, and then the Discovery Easter Egg Hunt, church hunt on the 31st.
Lots of Easter egg hunts going on right now. Like I said, yeah, I keep forgetting that this is Easter weekend. If it wasn't for you reminding me about these Easter eggs hunts, I'd be like, what are you talking about here? So, remember, he is risen. So it's I guess he's going to be like he crucified Friday, resurrected by Sunday. So, uh, remember Christ is King, and He is the reason for the season. And we'll have a little bit more discussion about the Christ is King going on a little bit later in the show because apparently there's a controversy around that. But I guess there's always been a controversy around Christ and being risen. So
All right, and then on all I've got left is that we're going to talk about today anyway is Oklahoma City Thunder won
yes,
their
yeah, I
game
saw
last
that this
night.
morning. I logged
Yep.
into Facebook and I was like,
They
oh, here we go.
they beat the
Beat
Pelicans 119 to 112.
Mhm.
So we got that, but we're playing another game tonight, which is actually going to be against the Houston Rockets.
Okay.
So that's going to be a heck of a game because the Rockets are always a good team, at least in my opinion, they are. And that's tonight at 7. So, and we only have a 1-win streak, and right now our standing is we are still in second. We are tied for losses, but the Nuggets have 1 win
Yeah,
above us.
they've had another game before us. So
exactly.
like I said, let's go down there
And they're also on a 4-win streak, whereas again now we're only on a 1-win streak right now. So the Nuggets are hot right now.
Streaks don't matter. It's a long season.
That's true. That is true. But that's about it. Like I said, that's really all we've got on local events. And since we're kind of ignoring the high school stuff today, because we got a lot to talk about
Absolutely.
worldwide today.
So we are going to go ahead and push right on into national news. Now, yesterday it was still pretty fresh, so I didn't really want to comment on it yet, and we had already kind of had our scripts worked out yesterday. But if you haven't already heard, you must be living under a rock because it's got to be the thing that's being talked about the most. That Baltimore bridge collapse occurred. That ship ran into it, and the entire bridge just came down. So our hearts and prayers go out to the families of those who were lost in that tragic event. And we are going to be feeling the ramifications from this event for a long time. That's going to affect, obviously, that local economy quite a bit. But it's going to affect our national economy too. I mean, this is going to hurt a lot. That's a major port that has been totally shut down now. So
I've got the bridge collapse and playing on the screen right now while you're talking.
Oh, okay, perfect. So, a lot of speculation and hearsay is being said about this event from people who, even people that I like, talking about how this is probably a cyber attack. And I understand. I don't know anything yet. Again, wait a week after something happens, because it's all right now. We're in the speculation phase of this. So, a lot of people are saying it could be a cyber attack. More than likely, it's probably just an accident. But I don't want to rule out the fact that it could be a cyber attack for sure. It's possible. It's a Singapore ship. So, but you have to realize, a pilot. So, the captain's probably a Singaporean captain or something along those lines. Somebody from Singapore who is the captain of that vessel. Probably a Singapore crew. But it could be an international crew as well. But the pilot, the person who is driving that boat, was more than likely an American citizen who lives in that Baltimore bridge area.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to understand about large vessels like that, there are sea captains who pilot the boat when they are out in the open ocean and open water. And then you have channel pilots or harbor pilots, local pilots who know so a channel is it's a dugout trench in these harbors that are deep enough for boats to drive through. Usually there's either they make lanes big enough for one, sometimes for two, to pass each other very closely. So what you have to understand is these harbor pilots know that channel like the back of their head or back of their hand. They understand it. They know how big the vessel they're driving. They're like, okay, this is how much room we have. These are the buoys. These are the markers. I know this place like the back of my hand. So you have to realize the person who was piloting that boat was more than likely an American, again, pilot who was a harbor pilot or channel pilot. So don't be so quick to just start throwing people under the bus. More than likely it was like I said, that's why the cyber attack theory is so popular right now, because they go, oh, the lights went out. It could have been a technical issue. We need to know how old the boat is. We need to know what that particular company or vessel's home, what's a good word? Their home policies are on boat maintenance and boat repair. When did it need to be rehauled, refitted? And it could have been something as simple as somebody maybe left a hatch or port open. Maybe the tanks weren't ballasted, the water tanks weren't ballasting properly. Maybe there was a technical issue in the ballast tanks, where the ballast tanks are where you can let water in and out. And typically when you're in a channel, you dump a bunch of water out that are in these ballast tanks that try to keep the boat level when you're out in deeper water. Like you bring on water into the boat when you're out in the deep ocean, so it'll float more steadily instead of being bumped around. But in the channels, you dump a lot of that water out so it'll float higher, but that's when it's a little bit more dangerous, because it's going to be a little bit less balanced. It's going to be a little bit more rocky or wavy. So, and again, I'm giving it to you in layman's terms, like, because some of my favorite channels are Maritime Horror, Big O Boats, and I'll have Chad show a video of Brick and Mortar, and we'll talk about, because this is not the first time something like this has happened. So there's an event that happened back in 1980 in Florida, where another boat, a large 600-foot ship, ran into what was it? It was near Tampa. It was near Tampa, Florida, and they hit the Skyway Sunshine Bridge. So if Chad, you let me know when you pull that. We'll just watch the first minute of the Brick and Mortar video, and we'll just listen to the radio calls out, the Mayday calls.
Got it.
So
I'm pulling it up right now. Go ahead and keep talking, though. I'm trying to get it
So,
situated.
Again, it could have been a number of factors. There could have been an issue in the ballast tanks. There could have been an electrical issue. There could have been some water got flooded into the boat. There's a million different things that could have happened. Now, like I said, you can't rule out cyber, but we also can't let that be we can't let that be the assumption either. So, with that being said,
all right, I've got it pulled up if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. So you can go ahead and play that. And just listen to. Again, this was 1980 in Florida.
Attention, this is United States Coast Guard, St. Petersburg, Florida. The vessel, Some Adventure, 606 foot, has hit the Skyway Bridge. Any vessels in Tampa Bay area, Skyway vicinity, proceed and assist. There are reports of people in the water. Department Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. I'm dropping anchor on barge and we'll be ready for the bridge to assist. The Dixie Progress, OS 5041. Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Roger, may I have the name of your vessel again, please, over. The Cub Dixie Progress, the Cub Dixie Progress. Dixie Progress, Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Roger, please advise me when you're on scene and the number of people you pick up out of the water. Some Adventure, Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Did either span of the Skyway go down into the water, over? The west span went down, west span. The west span is down in the water.
It's done.
Okay, so there you have it. Like, I mean, that was back in 1980 in Florida, and when when a section of that bridge collapsed, and there were cars driving, people commuting, going to work early in the morning, so it's still dark out, and there were cars just literally, they didn't even know that the bridge was out. Like, they were just driving off the edge because they didn't have by the time they reported that, they have those little electronic signs that say bridge closed. But, there were still cars driving because they had to communicate that information to a bunch of different emergency service units. So, again, there were just people commuting to work, just driving off the bridge and driving straight off into the ocean. Some people stopped, others didn't. Some people, there's one story of a guy that landed on the boat. Like, when the bridge collapsed, his car came straight down and he was just on the boat. So, some people lucked out, some people didn't. And
So this isn't as uncommon.
this is
as
not
we think
unheard
it
of.
is.
So don't go around being like, this is like people going Black Swan event. Like the Black Swan event is going to be what the effect that it's going to have on our economy, not this. I don't think this was a terrorist attack by the boat and its crew on the bridge. So keep that in mind. Don't attribute malice to what you can attribute ignorance or just, like I said, stupidity. Like I said, and again, this crew, it could be the company policies that are to blame, not. And again, so that video that clip you just listened to, that's from a video by Brick and Mortar. So Brick and Mortar, it's Brick and then Immortar, IMM Mortar. So watch that entire video. It's a fascinating watch, and just the things that compound that make these things happen, whether it be a tired captain, whether it be overworked crew, whether it be an overworked ship that isn't maintenance or repaired enough. Mm-hmm. Whether it be an overcompetent harbor pilot, whether it be a miscommunication between two ships coming into a bay or a channel. A lot of things happen at sea. That's why I'm fascinated by the maritime horrors. And again, check out another channel called Maritime Disasters or Maritime Horrors, and then Big Ol' Boats. They all talk about very similar. In fact, a lot of them overlap and talk about the same subjects, like the breaking up of the Carl D. Bradley, the loss of the Edmund Fitzgerald. There's a lot of really cool maritime disaster stories out there that, since I recently went on a cruise, I was just obsessed with it for a while. It's just like, I want to know everything that could go wrong so I'm not just kind of lost in the sauce when you're on the ship. Mm-hmm. So I love this stuff. I think it's very fascinating. But again, this is not unheard of. This is not the first. And these are the only two ones that we're talking about here in the States. There are bridge disaster events that happen in other countries around the world, too.
Probably more frequently than they do here.
Yes.
Like regular.
Yes. So, again, don't think this is like, this is the first time this has happened. Don't even come close to thinking like that. You have the collapse of that Tampa Skyway Sunshine Bridge. And I don't think it's in Tampa, by the way. It's just near Tampa. So, with that being said, do your own research. Wait a couple weeks. We'll hear if the boat was in disrepair. We'll hear if it was a drunk captain or a bad crew or maybe even a bad harbor pilot. And again, when you're making decisions like this in an emergency situation, like they go, why would they drop anchor? Like some people are going, why did they drop anchor? They could have just floated under the bridge. To them, dropping anchor might have been the best decision they thought they could make at the time. They probably didn't know that the bridge, they were going to go off the course. They probably weren't even, that maybe they could barely see the bridge because the cargo's piled up too high. They're just hoping they can get this ship to stop. Maybe they were trying to get, a more than likely scenario, they were probably trying to get the ship to run aground. Because like I said, if you're in a channel, the channel's like this big. All you got to do is go like a couple of feet to the left and you could accidentally ground the ship. So, and there could have been an argument amongst the captain of the vessel and the pilot of the vessel about what the best course of action would be. Granted, the pilot has the final say in what the best course of action could be.
And the pilot being the harbor master in this case?
Yes, and not the harbor master, but the most experienced person with that particular area.
Mm-hmm.
So, a million factors could be at play here. Don't rush to conclusions. Don't jump to conclusions. A detailed report will come out, and again, this is not an American vessel. So, I mean, if the U.S. can throw this crew and captain under a bus, believe me, they will. They're going to hold them accountable. So, just keep all that in mind. Let's wait another week and see what kind of investigations are put together and done. And don't expect to happen fast either, because thorough investigations take months, sometimes years. So just be advised, this could take a lot longer than we want. Now let's push on to our next subjects, which would be basically a man who ruined political discourse in the early and mid-2000s. And is actually the inspiration for, I guess, a lot of his political opponents, too. So we're talking about Jon Stewart of The Daily Show. So Jon Stewart is showing his political partisan and hackery at its finest when he was talking about Donald Trump and how he thinks what he did is illegal, saying that overvaluing his properties and then paying the minimum tax he could pay on these properties by valuing them less at the time of when it comes to pay taxes, but valuing them high when it comes to putting them up for collateral, which again, according to Kevin O'Leary, who does not like Donald Trump and is a big real estate guy, is like, this is common practice. And Tim Pool did a video, and go check out Tim Pool's video on Jon Stewart, where Jon Stewart did the exact same thing Trump did with his condo that he sold. A condo that the state or the U.S. government says is worth $1.8 million, he sold for $17 million. So I guess Jon Stewart's guilty of the same thing Donald Trump is. But it's just okay when it's okay when he does it, but it's not okay when Trump does it. Again, this is weaponizing the law, and it's not even really the law. You're just weaponizing the corrupt judges against your political opponents. That's what this is. You have to understand that. I mean, I can't think of a better way to describe it. I mean, check out Tim Pool's video on this. It's pretty impressive. But yeah, it's just political hackery at its finest. And what's so scary is I loved Jon Stewart as a kid. I remember watching and just being like, yeah, let him putting his little skits together, talking about the news, and presenting it in a pseudo professional, funny way. And this helped form the vast majority of millennials' political worldviews. I remember going into college and, people tell me they watch Fox News, and just because they said they watched Fox News, I didn't think that they were worthy of being listened to because of Jon Stewart. Like, oh, if you watch Fox News, you must be stupid. This is why these political commentators are so, again, I'm not saying they're dangerous, but like I said, they just pose a great threat to civil discourse because, again, Jon Stewart is a hack. He can come in and present the news in a way that's funny and seemingly truthful, and then misrepresent a lot of what he's talking about. And then whenever he gets called out for it, he'll be like, I'm just a comedian, man. I'm just a comedian. You can't hold me to the standard of a journalist. How easy it is for him to just walk away from that and be like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm just a comedian. You don't have to take anything I say seriously. And this is why political discourse is where it's at, because of people like Jon Stewart. This is why millennials are so unbelievably divided. because we all got our political views from Jon Stewart. That's why they're so hostile to, like, millennials. Our generation of millennials particularly are so hostile to Trump and Republicans, is because people like Jon Stewart destroyed the faith that anyone could have had in people who were in the right-wing media and politicians. So it's just, it's a scary thought that he had that level of influence from Comedy Central. And I remember everybody my age in college was just like, "Oh yeah, I love Jon Stewart. Love Jon Stewart. He's the best." People just have the Daily Show on, like, "Yeah, if you're not getting your news off the Daily Show, then you're uninformed." And it wasn't until after college when I had my political awakening, like, and then basically Jon Stewart inspired his enemies to come out. People like the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro. I mean, Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are direct responses to the kind of political hackery that Jon Stewart was putting out in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. Like, Jon Stewart awoke the sleeping giant of conservative media that has taken over today. And it's his fault. I mean, he wasn't the first by any stretch of the mind, but he was the first one that really took off with the Comedy Central Daily Show. So if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have gotten people like Steven Crowder. So I mean, they and the Ben Shapiros of the world. He created his enemies by being as successful as he was. And now a lot of his enemies have eclipsed him, and now they overshadow him in following and influence spheres. He's still relevant, of course. I mean, he's back on the Daily Show, for God's sakes. They brought him back because the people they got to replace him ran the show into the ground, because they were even worse hacks, and worse hacks politically, and they were less funny. Man. But yeah, the level of influence Jon Stewart had over the culture for 10 to 15 years was unprecedented. And the lies, mischaracterizations, and manipulations he spread, profound. And again, created this giant gap and created this hostile. I mean, don't get me wrong, political discourse has always been hostile. But he made it cool to make fun of your opponents. And again, this is what they want on the left. They want to look at conservatives and then make sure that they're demonized, villainized, and anytime they speak, we just laugh at them. And that's what Jon Stewart did. We just laughed at his political opponents and made it cool to do so. Again, the most powerful thing you can do is laugh at your opponent anytime they speak, even if they have something to say. It's to demonize them or make sure that nothing they have to say is taken seriously, even if they're telling you the house is on fire. That's what Jon Stewart did. So, let's kind of move on to the controversies going into. But now, again, so the controversies with conservative media going on right now. So this is what happens when when your organizations get too big. You employ a lot more people, and then you realize you start having political differences with people you work closely with. We had that scandal between the Daily Wire and Louder with Crowder, where Crowder was like, he didn't want to sell to the Daily Wire, and said that the terms that the Daily Wire were trying to come together with were just not fair and not lucrative enough. And fine, fair enough. It's whatever. So that bridge looked like it was burned between Crowder and the Daily Wire, which is fine. They don't have to work together. They don't have to do stuff together. But yeah, it looks like some of Steven Crowder's former employees are kind of coming back with a vengeance, saying that he created a hostile work environment. He was just a big meanie, and it's whatever. When you're that level of success, people are going to come after you. You're going to step on some toes, and you're going to have differences of opinions and disagreements with employees, and that's life. Now, Do I think Steven Crowder's probably the nicest person to work with? Probably not. I follow lots of people who have been on him with his show before, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not going to work with him again. He's just, they're actually really civil. They go, I'm just not going to say any more than that. I don't want to work with him anymore. So he must be pretty difficult to work with, which is understandable. But it's the same with the folks at the Daily Wire, too, apparently. So there's some controversy going on at the Daily Wire. Candace Owens, I guess, has been let go. And it looks more like it's going to be a contractual obligation release.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem like Ben's ego's gotten way too big and he needs to be humbled at some point. But like I said, again, when you're this successful and you make that much money, nobody can tell you anything. It's Steven Spielberg or George Lucas syndrome. It's like when you're in the top and you're on that level of a high for so long, nobody can tell you no. It's like, oh, we're going to make a Indiana Jones movie about aliens and stuff. And you're like, that doesn't sound like a very good movie idea. And they're like, what'd you say? You're fired. That's what's going on at the Daily Wire. So Candace Owens has had some different takes on the Israel-Palestine issue than Ben, and Ben is obviously super pro-Israel. And he just did not like anything he had to say. She just wanted the violence to stop and the people stop dying, which is a reasonable enough take. But again, Ben is super gung-ho Israel. Like, he's Jewish, obviously, and he has family in Israel, so it's understandable with where his ties are. But again, you have a lot of people here who are more like Candace Owens and like, yeah, well, America first. Let Israel do their own thing on their own time. And again, when these conflicts like this Ukrainian conflict and this Israeli conflict, like, if the conflict's not won in a year or a couple months, people really just lose interest. Especially if it doesn't affect them directly. So, it's not like it really affects any of us in a direct sense other than our money is going to go fund these conflicts. So, yeah. Anywho, moving back onto the Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens controversy, there's another controversy which is bleeding the Daily Wire subscribers, and it's the what we mentioned earlier in the show, the Christ is King controversy. And it seems like the Daily Wire is accusing anyone who says Christ is king of anti-Semitism. Now, so obviously Jews don't believe that Christ is the Messiah. But then again, Muslims don't believe Christ is the Messiah either. They think he's a prophet, not the Son of God. So whenever people try to equivocate that, oh, Muslims believe that Christ is a good yeah, but they don't believe he's the Son of God. I mean, like I said, this is what happens whenever Muhammad is deified more than Christ is.
In Islam, said God cannot interact with the world.
Yes.
That's the rule. Like I said, if you know anything about Islam, God cannot be physically in the world. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Christianity, he obviously can.
Yeah. So, to Steelman Ben Shapiro's case, there are a lot of very hostile Christians to Ben Shapiro and a lot of his takes. So they're weaponizing Christ is king, saying, hey, Christ is king, but they're saying it to him directly because they're being spiteful and vindictive against his takes against them. But again, and they're also weaponizing Christ is king, facts don't care about your feelings, So I'm guessing this is really getting under Ben's skin. And the fact that all of the Daily Wire, like, they're all, I don't know if they have a non-disclosure agreement or they just have like an agreement where they all post the exact same thing. But Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, and Matt Walsh all post solidarity posts with Jeremy Boring saying Christ is king, but, again, you listen to everything. If you're having a conversation with someone, ignore everything they said after the but or before the but. The but's the only thing you need to hear. So, again, steel manning Ben Shapiro's case. They are saying that Christ is king to be rude to him as a Jew, but they're trying to preach the truth of Christianity to Ben. But they are doing it in a vindictive way. However, the fact that they are all posting the same post and coming out in defense of Ben and saying, yeah, well, Christ is king, but you have to be nicer about how you say it. It just kind of goes against all the principles the Daily Wire ever stood for anyway. And again, let's not go overboard on Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, all these folks. Like, we cannot hold the left is always going to hold these hold us to our moral standards on the right, because the left doesn't have any standards. We're talking about the people that are trying to normalize pedophilia here, the Democratic Party and people on the left. I mean, they are trying to normalize the term MAPS. If you don't know what MAPS is, tell them, Chad.
Minor attracted persons.
So that's what we're trying to
do. Pedophile term
Yes.
that they're trying to take away.
This is what the Democrats, this is the kind of language and discourse Democrats are trying to normalize. So all this controversy within the conservative movement is only because we have standards and we have morality, and we're trying to police each other into what we call the correct way of thinking. But we also allow for that diversity of thought in our groups and movements. But again, obviously there's always going to be disagreements and fragmentation. But again, we cannot allow this to keep our eyes off the goal when it comes to winning the culture war and winning the conservative movement against the radical left in this country. So I know we ran really long today, probably ran a little overtime, but that's kind of where we're at, talking about some pop culture political talking heads points today. But that's about all we've got for you today. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. This is the Twins with Owasso Live. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you too can stay in the loop. And we appreciate y'all watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.
See you later, everybody.